The Maple Leafs are getting healthier, but does this murky the waters even more as final roster decisions still loom? Let's break it all down on today's edition of the Locked On Leafs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day.
You're Locked On Maple Leafs, your daily podcast on the Toronto Maple Leafs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome into the Locked On Leafs podcast, a daily Maple Leaf-centric podcast hosted by myself, Mike DiStefano, and my co-host, Dave Morassutti. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet, and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Just visit FanDuel.com to get started. What's up, Dave? How are you feeling on a Thursday?
Pretty good. Another fantasy draft in the books.
Yep, we did the Locked On Leafs fantasy draft, and I think we did pretty well. We're defending our title. We actually put out a video, so for anyone who wants to see, Dave and I thought it would be kind of fun if we basically recorded our war room. Dave and I are both co-GMs for this team, and we recorded us doing the draft live. And almost as if it's a podcast in itself. And we posted the draft live on YouTube. So you can go check that out. Our YouTube page should be up there right now. I don't know. What'd you title it? Just Locked On Leafs Fantasy Draft?
Bonus, a look into the Locked On Leafs Fantasy Hockey Draft.
Yeah, so it's Dave and I discussing, who we're gonna pick, our thoughts on each player, some of the reaches that were made. What would you say was the most outrageous and egregious selection in the draft?
Most egregious one?
Fun picks. I guess we can't. Fun picks aside, because somebody took Nikita Grabankin, and
yeah,
we took Ryan Reeves as a joke with our last pick of the draft, also. But there was who was that? There was one pick where I was like, oh, William Nylander went like 12th overall, which I thought was quite high. Like, I guess it is a locked on.
Matthew Nyes quite high as well.
Yeah, Nyes went really high, but that's expected, I guess, in a Leafs fan draft, I suppose, Locked On Leafs draft. But yeah, so if you're interested in checking out that video and seeing exactly who went where, it was a little long. The draft, it was like a full 26-man roster, so there's 26 rounds. There's 9 of us. It was about an hour and a half, I think, the draft ended up being. But you can go check it out right now over on our YouTube page, Locked On Leafs. Yeah, but for today, a couple things that we got to get into, Dave. We got some takeaways from Maple Leafs practice up in Muskoka. We got some injury updates and some positive injury updates as well to share with the class. So that's always good. But I will say that things are getting even more murky with the team getting a little bit healthier, right? Like, we kind of been taking a look at some rosters, and we've been tinkering and thinking, oh, okay, this might work for opening night. Oh, this player has a chance to make it opening night. But if the team is fully healthy, it does make roster decisions a lot more difficult for the Maple Leafs, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, and it's not even if we've had to talk so much about salary. It's not even about that anymore. It's just which lineup gives the Leafs the best chance, right?
Yeah.
And there's so many players right now that you can say this guy can make it, that guy can make it, this person should play there, this person should play there, and it's like it really is a jigsaw puzzle. It feels like it come down close to the end.
Yeah, no, like you're not wrong. It really does it is looking like a bit of a jigsaw puzzle right now, and there's a lot of players that are vying for spots. It's been a competitive camp, which is a good thing. Ultimately, it is a very good thing. But it means that there's going to be some decent players that are not going to be on the team, and a lot of those guys are not waivers exempt either. So the Leafs might lose a couple of their depth pieces, throughout the season to waivers if that is the case. So why don't we get into some of these updates, and then we can, in a little bit, I do want to take a look at what the roster might look like and some of the decisions that management will have to make over the next week before we get to, cap compliancy, roster compliancy in less than a week now until we get there. So we'll do that also in a little bit. But let's get to the updates from practice today. Injury wise, everyone was on the ice, which was a first, right? Jarnkrok and Tavares taking part in the main skate, so they're back and ready to go. They looked good. And then Jani, Hakanpaa, and Connor Dewar for the first time taking part in the main skate with the Maple Leafs, team, I guess. They've been on the developmental, the third tier of the groups when it comes to practices so far throughout training camps. This is the first time that they've been with the main club. And I mean, these are another two guys. This is kind of what we're talking about when if they're healthy, which I wasn't so sure if that was going to be the case, and they still might not be. Like the update wasn't clear whether or not they're healthy enough to play. But getting into a skate, not wearing a red non-contact jersey either for these guys does maybe keep the door open for one or possibly both of them to play in one of these final two preseason games. And if all goes well, they could be options for opening night for the Buds.
Especially Hakanpaa, right? Berube was asked what he brings, and he's like, pretty simple game, but his size, his reach, and how he plays around the net.
Well, he noted two specific things, right? He noted the way that he can kill plays behind the net, which we know is something that's very important for Craig Berube, and it's something that he values. And he talked about his penalty killing ability, and that kind of did get me thinking about how maybe Hakanpaa, if that's the case, if that's how Berube feels about him, and granted, he has to be healthy to be able to do that, to have that role. That offers up a little bit more than what Liljegren can give you. Like, Liljegren's not really going to give you much in terms of special teams. He's no longer a factor on the second power play unit because you got Oliver Ekman-Larsson, and you clearly would prefer to have a guy like Hakanpaa killing penalties. He's done a good job of that, throughout the course of his career while healthy, granted. Maybe Hakanpaa has a step ahead on Timothy Liljegren based on what I heard today. It sounds like Berube appreciates kind of what Hakanpaa can do. I haven't really heard him say anything nice or negative about Liljegren so far through camp.
Just feel like no one's really asking about Liljegren, and
true,
which is interesting for two reasons. One, you've got a defenseman who just got a pretty sizable salary increase, like more than we expected, right? And usually that would mean, okay, does this mean Liljegren's going to get more of an opportunity this year? And then they bring in a bunch of veterans, right? Especially the Hakanpaa one. It's just like that signing always screamed to me as I don't think Timothy Liljegren is going to be getting into the lineup as much as we expected, or is his name going to be out on the block soon? And that's it's. I mean, again, I don't think they're going to make those decisions until absolutely necessary, because injuries can happen, and you're going to need a Liljegren, I think, at some point. But yeah, it just feels like the pressure has been on him, but no one's really been talking about that, and I'm surprised.
Yeah, Marshall Refi has become, quite the player for the Maple Leafs too. They've seemed to really like the camp that he's had. I've heard Berube speak glowingly about Marshall Refi also. So could they potentially look at him as like the team's seventh defenseman if they do move on from a Liljegren? There is someone who they like. Connor Timmins is still in the fold as well, obviously, as of right now. So, a team that there is a bit of a cap crunch. Alleviating $3 million would kind of help some of that, right? If there were a market for Timothy Liljegren, and with the Maple Leafs, it just doesn't seem like there's much of a role for this guy at this point in his career. Like, I don't know. I kind of think that if Hakanpaa is healthy, he might be the preferred option on this third pair, and have like Hakanpaa and Benoit just be, a defensive force to be reckoned with, pretty much as a third pair defensive unit.
Yeah, and like you look at where this team was lacking last year, special teams, penalty kill was one of them. Yes. I think you would expect that if they want this penalty kill to be better, and Hakanpaa is healthy, he's going to be playing. Like, maybe some people think, he's not going to play all 82 games, which, okay, he might not. he seems like they're going to play him as much as they could possibly get out of him, right? Albeit with his knee injury kind of lingering a bit, but they speak as if he's a valued penalty killer, which, I mean, you give someone like that, you try after one attempt to not get him signed and you try it again. There's something they definitely want that he brings, and that's probably his penalty killing ability.
Penalty killing and play killing as well behind the net with that long reach, long stick. He's a big dude. But can he stay healthy, right? Can that knee hold up? It didn't last year when they banked on John Klingberg, but possibly they can get more beneficial outcome with the Hakanpaa gamble, I guess, is what they're going through this year. So that's good to see everyone out on the ice. It definitely makes this gives you a bit more clarity, I suppose, in terms of what their health status might be. But again, it does also murky the waters just because now you're looking, okay, that's 2 more players that you have to add into the mix of the final 23. And there's probably a good 27, 28 guys you think are still at camp that have a shot to make this 23-man roster. Mm-hmm. So there are a bunch of teams, a bunch of players that's, still, don't have room. Like the Leafs just don't have room for everybody. So why don't we come back and let's kind of talk about some of the big decisions that might be coming over the next couple of days. I've got cap wages up. We can go through the GM mode and kind of do a fun little exercise and kind of play Brad Treliving over the next couple of days as he tries to get down to the 23-man roster. So we'll do that next here on the Locked On Leafs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Hey, NHL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. It's North America's #1 sports book. So when you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet on FanDuel. You can bet on whatever you'd like. There's a lot of futures out there. You can take a look. Austin Matthews over under 101.5 points. That's what it's set right now over on FanDuel. That's FanDuel.com. Welcome back into the Locked On Leafs podcast. Mike DiStefano and Dave Morassutti with you here as we are each and every Monday through Friday. You can find us wherever you get a podcast and also up on YouTube. Just search up Locked On Leafs, hit subscribe, and get daily Maple Leafs content directly to you each and every morning. All right, Dave. It's a game day morning, technically. Maple Leafs in action tonight against the Detroit Red Wings. It'll be their second to last game of the preseason. I know many hoping it would be the last game. I'm not like the guys who are up in Muskoka. They're not playing tonight, right? It's probably going to be the B squad.
I'm really hoping that's the case because I have tickets to Saturday's game and I want to see the NHLers and I don't want to see the. It's a road game. Usually, you save that for the other guys that are playing, right?
Yeah.
Generally. But I mean, they're gonna be up there tonight. I'm assuming they're coming back. Yeah, because it's a game in Detroit. So unless they left today, they're gonna fly out. I just don't see it happening. But that would make the most sense to have the B squad tonight.
Do we see Topi Niemela? Do we finally get to see Topi Niemela?
I mean, I think so. Just because I don't know how many other defensemen they have on this B squad that will play.
Well, they haven't really sent anyone back or away yet. No. Like they still kind of, and I think it's because they're waiting for this final game to send people back to the American League to start AHL camp and also, back to junior or whatever it may be. I guess Danford was already sent down. Noah Chadwick was sent down, a couple guys, but they haven't announced like a big, massive wave of cuts yet. I would imagine that would come the second the game is over pretty much tonight in Detroit. So yeah, that's what I would expect for tonight. Don't think we'll see a lot of the guys, a lot of the main group there because it just doesn't make sense to come all the way back on a game day from Muskoka down to Detroit. So I think they'll spend another day, maybe 2 up there and then come back and play that final game on Saturday. So yeah, looking forward to it. Still going to be worthwhile watching tonight, I would think, just because you get a chance to see a little glimpse of the future of what the Toronto Maple Leafs might be, or at least the depth pieces. Anyway, let's talk about a couple of things here. Before we get into deciphering like what lineups decision making will be made by the Maple Leafs over the next couple of days here, why don't we take a look at something we saw? They worked on special teams today in practice, and I think it gave us a glimpse a little bit into what the Maple Leafs might be leaning toward or thinking about when it comes to that decision making. In particular, what we saw on the power play. So they had a chance to work on both the penalty kill and the power play today in practice. And something I found notable. So no changes to the top power play unit, obviously. Riley, Nylander, Marner, Matthews, and Tavares. But on the second unit, Robertson and Pacioretty were taking part in this practice. This leads me to believe that the Leafs have made the decision that these two players will be making the team. And because I feel like they wouldn't want to waste a special teams practice when there's so few of them with placeholders, right? So to me, this kind of tells me that, all right, we know that there's still some battles, and Berube said there's still a couple of battles, still a couple of jobs up for grabs, some things that are still unsettled, I believe is the word he used. But what I believe is settled is that both Nick Robertson, our boy, Nicky Bobby, and Max Pacioretty look to be on the team.
Yeah, I mean, generally when you're working on those things, it leads me to believe that those two guys have an inside track on making the team.
Yeah.
And it gives clarity, but it also doesn't give clarity. That's the whole point of this. Is like, all right, we can pretty much have those guys in the lineup, but then it's like, okay, so how does the rest of it work?
Well, Dave, I guess we could look into that, shall we? Take a peek into what the decision making looks like for the Toronto Maple Leafs. Let me just screen share it here. What we'll be looking at here on Cap Wages, which is the new cap friendly site that
Thank
is
you,
basically
whoever put together Cap Wages, by the way, because we were all like
great
losing
site.
our minds.
It's a great site. It's basically a copycat of Cap Wages or of Cap Friendly. So this is the situation that the Maple Leafs currently are dealing with. Now, again, Pacioretty and Lorentz are currently PTO, so they are not factored in. They're not here yet. We will have to go and sign those two, which we'll do in just a moment. But this is the roster we're looking at right now in terms of forwards. And then here they've got a couple of defensemen as well. I suppose we could probably do that. So this is the group that we're looking at right now. The Maple Leafs are taking a look at that are currently signed, and it is cap compliant, right? You do have a group that is definitely cap compliant at the moment. You've got $30,000 in cap space, but it's cap compliant and it all works out. The problem is, Dave, there are two additional players that the Maple Leafs still need to get under contract and still need to sign that will kind of put a wrinkle into some of the plans here. So those players would obviously be, can you not add? Actually, hold on. Can you not do that on this?
Like sign players?
Yeah, on this
Yeah,
site.
click on like the position that you want to sign them in. No, go down.
Like there? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Sign UFA. Okay. So Pacioretty. See, I'm so used to
Cap friendly.
cap friendly.
Okay. Yeah.
So Max Pacioretty, okay, 1-year deal. Actually, you know what? I don't know.
$1 million.
$1 million. Let's say it's $1 million. Sign the contract. Okay, now you've got Max Pacioretty signed. Do we think Steven Lorentz signs the deal? Like at this point, if Jarnkrok's making the team, Pacioretty's making the team, does Steven Lorentz make the team also? Like I feel like that's just a little rich. Like it just feels because they're gonna have to send somebody down, right? Who are you sending down at that point? Pontus Holmberg, who has to try and clear waivers? Probably not. Are you gonna send down Ryan Reeves? Do they have the stomach to do that? This is also assuming that Dewar and Jarnkrok will be good to go by opening night, by the way.
Yeah, I'm wondering if one of the decisions is that Dewar's not starting with the team. Like they might be either putting him on LTIR, which I think that would likely be the case.
So if we put him on LTIR, that means he's going to have to miss 24 days and 10 games. So both of which. So that's the decision that they're going to have to make. Is he not close enough where he could be ready to go in the first month of the season? I don't know. He's skating already. Like he was with the team today skating. So that might make things easier if you do put him on LTIR to start the year. But then you don't have him for the first month of the season. So it is a little bit of a discussion, I guess. But ultimately, you can't skirt the rules. Like if he's healthy and good to go, I assume he plays. You know what I mean?
That's very true. But I also think that he's just getting started skating. Like it's not like he's been skating for like with the group for a while. This is his first time, but yeah, I do like a lot of people were assuming that he'd be on LTR, but I think today's development means he's not as far off as we thought.
Lorentz, I could see him signing a league minimum deal, like 800,000. So just for now, this is what we're looking at. Okay. So if we put Connor Dewar on LTIR, the team is still over the cap by about $500,000. So someone has to get sent down at this point. I don't see it being any of the defensemen. Obviously, you're not sending down a goalie. So one of these forwards will have to get sent down, or one of these PTOs don't make the team. Which is more likely, right? The fact that, like, who do you think the Leafs would prefer to have? Honestly, it pretty much comes down to this one situation for me. Who do you think the Leafs would rather have? Lorentz, Holmberg, and Ryan Reeves. You could pick two. Which two would you prefer?
Holmberg and Lorentz.
Which two do you think the Leafs would prefer?
I'd probably say Holmberg, Reeves. And because Lorentz, they can see if maybe he'll. I don't know what they really do with Lorentz.
Well, then you release him from his PTO. Like if he's not going to factor into your team, I mean, I guess you could try and sign him and then move him to the minors, I suppose, is a possibility, right? Just sign him and then see if he can clear waivers. And all of a sudden you've got a guy who you could bring up, first injury that occurs. But this could possibly be the opening night roster. If all is well and everyone's healthy on night one, this could be your opening night roster that is cap compliant by $210,000. You could even possibly give Pacioretty an extra $200,000 here, right? Because you got a little bit of cap space. You could do that, right? You could go $1.2 million. And then this is pretty much what the roster would look like. At this point, I think this is what we see. As much as Lorentz, has had opportunity and I think he's been decent for the team. I don't know if he's going to make it. I think there's just too much competition, and barring an injury or barring a trade, I think he gets released. I don't think Lorentz breaks with the main club.
Yeah, I mean, as much as they've really been impressed with him, it's just like, okay, maybe it's a conversation of do you prefer Lorentz or Dewar? It could be one of those things too.
But 1,000% you prefer Dewar, but that also does get a little, because then you activate Dewar and now it's like, all right, now you're 900,000 over the cap. So it's like, who you sending down at that point? If Dewar comes up and there's no other injuries, you got to activate him. Is that when like Ryan Reeves gets sent down? That's kind of the only other guy. Like even if you sent down Holmberg, you tried, you're still going to be over the cap because it's $800,000 and you need 969. So
it's so tough. Like I was fiddling around with it too for a little bit, and man, I do think that a trade makes so much sense in terms of there's guys that you probably don't want to, you want to see if you can maybe get something for.
Right.
And we've talked about David Kampf being one of those guys. I don't think Jarnkrok is one of those guys. I mean, unless the team is going to offer you something that makes too much sense not to go for, but I don't see that.
Yeah.
Like, the problem is none of those guys really have the value to really say, all right, let's pull the trigger on moving one of them. And they have modified no trade clause. They have a little bit of say in what happens too.
Camp has a modified no trade?
Yeah.
What are we giving fourth line centers? $2.4 million and a modified no trade. What are we doing here? Jeez Louise.
Yeah. Somebody should have just said, like, just don't even bother.
Yeah, let's just not sign the guy. Like, you got enough money, you got enough term. You didn't have to give him a modified no trade clause on top. I mean, I'm sure it's a small one, like 10-team no trade list or something. So it does leave space for you to trade to 20 other clubs without his approval. But yeah, I don't know why he's getting a no trade clause. But anyways, a trade would help a lot. Let's take a break. Let's come back and see if you trade Camp, then what does it look like after that? So we'll take one more quick break and we'll come back and we'll continue the exercise. It's Mike DiStefano and Dave Morassutti. You're listening to the Locked On Leafs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. The Locked On Leafs podcast continues with Mike DiStefano and Dave Morassutti. We're taking a look. We're playing a little GM mode. We're channeling our inner Brad Treliving and taking a look at essentially the decisions that the Maple Leafs will have to make in the coming days. And, we've kind of taken a peek at what we believe the roster will look like come opening night. A cap compliant roster, not as of right now because we have Connor Dewar on this team. But let's say, Dewar is ready to go, okay? And we do trade David Camp. So just for the purposes of just getting rid of the cap so that we can just figure that out. Let's put on LTIR right now. But let's say you trade him for, I don't know, you attach like Topi Niemelä with him, who the Leafs seem to hate anyways, and, you get something else in return. All of a sudden, now you have an additional $1.4 million in space. And you could end up signing Steven Lorentz as well. Where's Lorentz? There he is. Promote Lorentz.
Yeah.
And you've got a full 23-man roster with $630,000 in cap space.
And like people wondering about center, I think Holmberg can play center too because he did the last game.
Yep, you can.
It's not even And I understand. So people are like, "Oh, you're going to trade David Camp just to keep Ryan Reeves around?"
Could do this. Could go here. That could be your fourth line. And that point, Dewar factors in. You get Revo in there on a night where you need it. Like you could do a lot. Like there's a lot of flexibility.
You could do a lot, and I prefer the flexibility versus like the depth is crucial, right? And I just think that it makes so much sense for the Leafs to look at their alternatives and look to see if a trade can be made, rather than let's just be satisfied with David Camp as the fourth line center. But again, that's also us assuming that the Leafs are even considering making a trade, involving David Camp, because obviously we've heard nothing. Mm-hmm. But Sam Lafferty, I didn't expect Sam Lafferty to get traded last year.
Mm-hmm.
And he got traded literally before cuts, like the final cuts.
Now, I believe Lafferty wasn't, like, he was making what, one and change? Like, he wasn't making a lot. And there was an expiring deal. So it was a lot easier to move out.
Yeah.
And a lot harder.
Nothing.
I think they got a 5th round pick for it. But it's a lot harder to make that trade when it's $2.4 million against the cap for an additional 3 years, which is the situation that we have right now when it comes to David Camp. So it's not an easy trade to make, I would say. There's not going to be a lot of takers lining up to take on that deal. But I mean, if the Maple Leafs can make it enticing with a little sweetener on top, there are many players who can take over that 4C role. I mean, that's the beauty that a guy like Holmberg, guy like Dewar, Steven Lorentz, he can play center as well. Like, you've just got a bunch of dudes, and Bobby McMahon could potentially play center. But, so there's a lot of options that you have when it comes to filling in the gap there. And, if we're even talking about, okay, well, David Kampf, you talk about how you need guys who can kill penalties. Who's the player who has been praised for his penalty killing amongst that group all camp long?
Mr. Lawrence.
I was going to say Pontus Holmberg as well. Pontus Holmberg has also been given
I've heard a lot of good things about Lawrence as a penalty killer. So
you've got both of them. So you've got two guys who can easily fill in for
two guys for the price of a David Kampf and then some.
Doesn't it make sense? Again, it's a lot harder to make this trade than we're making it seem, obviously. But
find out who the 10 teams are. Call a team that's on the list. What can you give us for David Kampf? Bag of pucks? Okay, there you go.
Bag of pucks, you got to throw in a little sweetener. Pay for our sodas for the year. A little shout out to Moneyball there.
Hey, Leafs got a Coca-Cola sponsorship. They can throw that in there.
There you go. We'll shovel a bunch of Coca-Colas out your way. But yeah, like it makes things a lot easier if the Leafs can somehow facilitate a trade of some kind with one of their higher priced defensemen or players. I mean, you could even argue, like we talked about, maybe trading Liljegren. I mean, that's even more cap off the books. And if we look again, you can bring in Hakanpaa, right? Let's say you trade away let's trade away Liljegren, okay, and see what that looks like, right? You toss Liljegren out, we can activate Kampf again, just for funsies, make this happen anyway. And I'm assuming it would end up being Marshall Refi, who would probably
Refi or Timmins, one of those two.
I think it's Refi, honestly. And all of a sudden you got Refi as your guy now. Mm-hmm. And this is one of these players will have to go. I do believe we are over the space. But anyways, it works cap-wise.
Yep.
Right? 4.55, and maybe you don't sign a Lorentz, or I don't know. Maybe you do send Ryan Reeves down to the minors, and you just kind of deal with it. And all of a sudden, this is your group right here. There's options. A trade makes things a lot more palatable. One of Kampf or Liljegren would make things a lot easier. Or Reeves. You could also move on from Ryan Reeves and make things kind of work too. Actually, really quickly, let's check and see what that looks like. If we just honestly, is it as easy as moving Ryan Reeves down to the minors? Where's Revo? He's not even here.
What'd you do with him? Where'd he go?
What did I do with Reeves? Oh my God, did I send him down already?
Yes.
Oh yeah, I did. Okay. So let's see if it's this. Oh, I have two Connor Dewars. Okay, that's interesting. Let's send you to the minors for funsies.
How did we get two Connor Dewars?
I don't know what the hell happened there. But anyways, is this a... No, see, you're 600 over the cap. So you still need to find about 600 grand that would have to go at some point. So, yeah, Reeves wouldn't be the issue. The only way to make it happen where you could have a full 23-man roster would be to get rid of David Kampf or Timothy Liljegren, pretty much, when everyone's fully healthy.
That's tough.
Yeah, so there it is. Those are that's the discussion, I guess, that will probably be happening in the Maple Leafs war room as they're deciding what to do with the team over the next week ahead of roster cut down day. And what is it, Tuesday or Monday maybe, when they're going to have their to be cap compliant and 23-man compliant. I believe Monday will be the date, Monday 5:00, I'm guessing. Mm-hmm. So we'll see what the Leafs end up doing. There's a few options, but a trade makes things a lot easier, especially if you want to sign both of those PTO guys. Definitely makes things a lot easier. So we'll see. We'll see what they end up doing. All right, buddy. I guess that will do it for today's podcast. I'd like to thank you all for listening and supporting the show. You can subscribe to the Locked On Leafs podcast on all platforms and receive daily Leafs content. Follow myself on Twitter at Mickey_Canuck. Follow Dave at D_Morassutti. And follow the show as well at Locked On Leafs. We'll be back with another episode for you guys tomorrow. Enjoy the game tonight, folks. Until then, keep it locked right here on Locked On Leafs.